Can you confirm for me the verse we're on?
Okay, sure. So reading in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, going systematically, we're in verse 27 of chapter 1, canto 3.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpatrupyascha Kripasindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, Chapter 1. We're on text 27. Kachit Kurunam Paramasuhrino
Yachit Kunam Brahmasuhino.
Bhamasaste Sukham Anga Shaurehe
Vama Sahaste Sukam Anga Sui.
Yuvai Sasuranam Putravaddadati
Yovahashrinam Pativatadati.
Varan Varan Yuvaratarpanena
Valam Vadanyo Vahatapanena.
Kachit Kurunam Paramasuhrino
Yachit Kunam Brahmasuhino.
Bhamasaste Sukham Anga Shaurehe
Vama Sahaste Sukam Anga Sui.
Yuvai Sasuranam Putravaddadati
Yovahashrinam Pativatadati.
Varan Varan Yuvaratarpanena.
Valam Vadanyo Vahatapanena.
Would anybody like to chant?
Chitkunam Paramasurino
Yachit-kunam Paramasurino.
Vamasaste Sukamanga Sori
Vamasaste Sukhamanga Sori.
Yovai Swastrinam Pitrivadadati
Yovahashrinam Pativatadati.
Varan Vadanyo Bharatarpanena
Valam Vadanyo Vahatapanena.
Chitkunam Paramasurino
Yachit-kunam Paramasurino.
Vama Sahaste Sukamanga Sori
Vamasahaste Sukhamanga Sori.
Yovai Swasrinam Pitrivadadati
Yovahashrinam Pativatadati.
Varandanyo Varatapanena
Valam Vadanyo Vahatapanena. Yachit-kunam Paramasurino. Yachit-kunam Paramasurino. Vamasahaste Sukhamanga Sori. Vamasahaste Sukhamanga Sori. Yovahashrinam Pativatadati.
Yovai Swasrinam Pitrivadadati
Valam Vadanyo Vahatapanena.
Varan Vadanyo Bharatarpanena
Chit-kunam Paramasurino.
Yachit-kunam Paramasurino.
Vamasahaste Sukhamanga Sori.
Vamasahaste Sukhamanga Sori.
Yovai Svarinam Nam Pitrava Dadati
Yogastasinam Pitiva Dadati
Varam Madamyo Varatarpanena
Varam Yogastapanena
Kachit Gurunam Paramasurino
Kachit Gurunam Paramasurino
Vamasaste Sukhamanga Shori
Vamasaste Sukamangashori
Yogaisvasrinam Pitrivadadati
Yogastasinam Pitiva Dadati
Vadanyo Bharatarpanena
Varam Yogastapanena
Kachit Gurunam Paramasurino
Kachit Gurunam Paramasurino
Vamasaste Sukhamanga Sori
Vamasaste Sukamangashori
Vasrinam Pitrivadadati
Yogastasinam Pitiva Dadati
Varan Vadanyo Varatarpanena
Varam Yogastapanena
Okay, word for word. Are there more? No? Okay, word for word. Kachit,
Kachit
whether,
Whether
kurunam,
Gurunam
of the Kurus,
Gurus,
Padamaha,
Rama
greatest,
Greatest
Suhrit,
Surit
well-wisher,
Well-wisher
Naha,
Now
our,
Our
Pamaha,
Rama
brother-in-law,
Brother-in-law
Saha,
Saha
he,
He
Aste,
Aste
is,
Is
Sukham,
Sukam
happy,
Happy
Anga,
Amra
O Uddhava,
Odava
Chaurehe,
Shauri
Vasudeva,
Vasudeva
Yaha,
Yaha
one who,
Ranu
Vai,
Vai
certainly,
certainly,
Swasvaranam,
Svasvinam
of the sisters,
of the sisters,
Pitrivat,
Pitrivat,
like a father,
a father,
Dadati,
Devotee
gives,
is
Varan,
Varan
everything desirable,
everything desirable,
Vadanyaha,
Vadanya
munificent,
munificent,
Vada,
Vava
wife,
Wife
Tarpanena,
Taparena
by pleasing.
By pleasing
Okay, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai
This verse is spoken by Vidura to Uddhava. Translation, please tell me whether the best friend of the Kurus, our brother-in-law Vasudev, is doing well. He is very munificent. He is like a father to his sisters, and he is always pleasing to his wives. Purport. Lord Krishna's father, Vasudev, had 16 wives, and one of them, named Pauravi or Rohini, the mother of Baladev, was the sister of Vidura. Vasudev, therefore, was the husband of Vidura's sister, and thus they were brothers-in-law. Vasudev's sister, Kunti, was the wife of Pandu, Vidura's elder brother, and in that sense also, Vasudev was brother-in-law to Vidura. Kunti was younger than Vasudev, and it was the duty of the elder brother to treat younger sisters as daughters. Whenever anything was needed by Kunti, it was munificently delivered by Vasudev due to his great love for his younger sister. Vasudev never dissatisfied his wives, and at the same time, he supplied the objects desired by his sister. He had special attention for Kunti because she became a widow at an early age. While inquiring about Vasudev's welfare, Vidura remembered all about him and the family relationship. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai. Glories to the assembled devotees. Good to be with all of you.
Krishna.
So, in this conversation between Vidura and Uddhava, first we hear that Vidura asked about the Lord, Krishna and Balaram. And now there's a lengthy discussion or remembrance of devotees. So this is very relevant for us. I'm going to talk about the role of devotees in our lives, specifically how we're connected with devotees through service. So in the general sense, just at first, looking at what devotees are, how they play a role in the lives of other devotees. Lord Chaitanya in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he condenses down these 64 angas or limbs, aspects of devotional service into the 5 most important. He says the 5 most important are serving the devotees, associating with them, serving the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and related texts, serving the deity, and living in a holy place. So of the 5 most important practices of devotional service, one is just associating with devotees. And many devotees have pointed out that of the 5, the associating with devotees actively helps you engage you in the other 4, because devotees will do that. They'll help you chant, they'll read Srimad Bhagavatam with you, they'll introduce you to the deity and develop your relationship, and they'll turn your home into a holy place. In fact, in the first canto, Yudhishthir, the elder brother of Arjuna, one of the Pandavas, he actually speaks to Vidura, who's speaking today's verse. He says, Bhavad vidha bhagavatas tirtha puta swayam vibho tirti kurvanti tirtani svantastena gadaputaha. He says, actually, my dear Vidura, you're like a holy place personified, because wherever you go, the Lord is there because he's in your heart, and you purify even the holy places because you go there. And these kinds of verses are all over the Shastra. Vidura is being glorified, other devotees are being glorified, devotees in general are being glorified. In fact, in the 9th canto, the Lord himself says a very famous verse. He says, Sattvo hridayam mahyam sattunam hridayam tvaham mananyattena janati naham tepyo managapi. He says, the pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. This is, of course, in the context of one of his devotees being treated very offensively. And when the Lord was approached for forgiveness for this offense, the Lord basically said, I can't help you, because I myself am dependent on my devotees. You should approach the devotee you've offended. So again, devotee is so important. Sripad Ramanujacharya of the Sri Sampradaya was fond of saying that if nothing else works in your devotional practice, if nothing's working and you're despondent, just find the devotees and sit down with them. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur borrowed that expression from him and was also fond of saying that. Nothing else is working, just go and sit with the devotees. So how does that work, right? Now, the devotees are very powerful because, as we heard, they're carrying the Lord in their heart. Practically, this means that there's service. Wherever there's devotees, there's service. His Grace Jayananda Prabhu, famous devotee in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada said that his day of disappearance, because he passed away, in the last 1976, not long before Srila Prabhupada did, but before, Prabhupada said his disappearance day should be acknowledged as like the day of a great saint. Now, Jayananda Prabhu was famous for engaging devotees in service. He would be often working on the Ratha Yatra paraphernalia, the carts, and hammering and dealing with the carpentry, and it looked like he was just a carpenter, but he was actually serving Jagannath. And one future great devotee is the future sannyasi Jayapataka Swami was walking by and was engaged in service to the Ratha Yatra cart by Jayananda Prabhu. This is very, very common. Jayananda would just ask people to chip in. He would engage people in service. This is what devotees do. They find ways to engage, and people's lives are changed. They're just irrevocably changed. So Krishna himself is very, very satisfied when one approaches the devotees, and one remembers them and serves them. And you see here that Vidura is relishing in this verse and in upcoming verses, remembrance of the devotees that he is served with. This is a very emotional time for him, actually. We heard it, I think, 2 verses ago, that he's having this conversation with Uddhava, and actually he's asking questions he already knows the answer to. He's asking how the Lord is and how the Lord's family are, the devotees. But he already knows they've all left the planet. This is a very, very intense emotional situation. And Jiva Goswami explains he's asking questions he already knows the answer to because it's helping him. It's an emotional thing. It's not a practical thing. There's a feeling of separation from the devotees because they're actually not there anymore. But he's remembering them. And in that remembrance, there is a spiritual emotion. There's the experience of spiritual emotion because he's served with all of them. He's connected with all of them through service. I know in my own very, very short, span of service to the devotees in this life, I remember very clearly devotees that I've served with. I came up through Devotees Association in Toronto, and I remember even devotees I haven't seen in 8 or 9 years, who are literally on the other side of the world with so much affection, so much appreciation, because we distributed Srila Prabhupada's books together. We helped host little programs, doing whatever we could with our little capacity as aspiring devotees, serving prasadam. It's a very, very powerful connection. And I had the association recently of the devotee who made me a devotee, my Vartmana Pradarshika Guru. I was in Atlanta, and when I was in Atlanta, I had the association of Mangalarti Dasi. Actually, I was with Bhakti and Kelly. We went to a program, and Mangalarti was hosting it, classic Bhagavad Gita program, and I got to have her association again, and it was like being with my mom. It was wonderful. So it's such a powerful thing, actually, associating with devotees, especially the ones we're connected through service, and that association can happen simply by remembrance, as Vidura is showing here. And we can see that actually in the context of Krishna consciousness, service to the devotees is actually hugely important. If you look at, for example, the very formal Pancharatric texts, the texts that delineate how to serve the deity, right? There's so much about the ritual. There's so much about how to offer flowers and incense and the order, and there's mantras, and some of the mantras you can't even chant until you're second initiated, and this and that. And it's wonderful. I mean, I worship the deity myself. I can tell you though, in the Pancharatric text, it's quite clear that the offering of bhoga, of food to the deity of Krishna, that whole process, it's not complete until the very last thing happens, which is you distribute the prasadam, right? You actually have to do all these things. You gather the paraphernalia, you shop for the best ingredients, you cook it in its consciousness, you offer all these mantras on the altar, but it's not done. As far as Krishna is concerned, it's completely, it's wasted, it's incomplete. If you don't take that prasadam and you find devotees and you distribute it to them. And in this context, the devotee is anyone who will take the prasadam because they're honoring the Lord's remnants. That's how Krishna thinks. He doesn't think, gimme, gimme. He's thinking about the relationship between himself and his devotees, and that's nourished by the distribution of prasadam. So even in those very formal, very process-based texts of deity worship, it's talking about service to the devotees. What to speak in Bhagavatam, we have in the 11th canto, we have a description of the different stages of devotional practice. The Kanishta Adhikari, they can appreciate the Lord, right? That's something. They can appreciate the Lord, and they actually have some connection with him, but they're very kind of laser pointed. They don't really see anything else outside of their connection to the Lord. They don't see how he's connected to others. And one of the hallmarks of the Madhyam is that they can and they do. They appreciate devotees. They can appreciate how somebody is actually practicing devotional service. Just like you may have some experience with persons who are sincere in their connection to God, but if they're very, very black and white about that, they cannot appreciate how others are serving God. They may be very sectarian about their service, very sectarian about the principle of bhakti, that I have bhakti, or my tradition has bhakti, but you don't, right? They're very kind of narrow. That's a kind of kanishtaness. And the madhyam, the advancing devotee, can actually appreciate, yeah, I have some connection with the Lord, with Krishna, however one understands God. And so do other people. And that realization is actually a deepening of one's practice. And Srila Prabhupada in many places would say, we cannot remain on the Kanishta platform. We have to come to this, at least the Madhyam platform, if not the highest stage, which is characterized by appreciation for devotees. So in many ways, this is the culture that Vidura is exemplifying for us here. He's appreciating and he's remembering. And it's described in the verse that Vidura was very munificent, right? This word is used, munificent. Whenever anything was needed by Kunti, it was munificently delivered by Vasudeva. So Vasudeva was munificent. Vidura is also remembered as being munificent. This word is not used very often. It's from Latin, from munificare, which means to give gifts, literally, to be gift-giving. And this is calling back to Rupa Goswami's description of the loving exchanges. You know, in the 6 loving exchanges, it's described that you want to connect with devotees, there's 6 things you can do. You can hear from them by giving your confidence, and you can reveal your heart. You can give and receive prasadam, and you can give and receive gifts. And this gift-giving nature, this well-wishing nature, just like Srila Prabhupada is describing himself as your ever well-wisher. And in today's word for word, we have the word suhrit about Vasudeva. He is the well-wisher, always the best friend of the Kurus. This is a quality of the devotees in relationship to each other that really endears them to Krishna. They're gift-giving. They're trying to give to the devotees always. Also, one rather esoteric aspect of this side of our philosophy, if you consider, you know, Rupa Goswami talks about in the Nectar of Devotion, Anya Pilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam Anukungena Krishnanam Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. This Uttama Bhakti, pure devotional service, what is it? It's devotional service that's performed without wanting anything back, without asking for any material benefit, without even asking for liberation, simply for Krishna's benefit, right? So the devotee, the pure devotee, is thinking like that and feeling like that, which means that in their relationship with Krishna, they refuse to ask for anything. But Krishna's nature, as we heard, is that the devotees are always in his heart and he doesn't know anything but them. So he wants to be giving to them. So this is a relationship where the devotee just wants to give and doesn't want anything back. And Krishna just wants to give and doesn't want anything back. So what does that mean for us who are not necessarily pure devotees? It means that if you serve a pure devotee, you're actually doing something that Krishna can't do, because the pure devotee won't accept service from Krishna. But if you can do something to serve that pure devotee, serve their mission, you become so dear to Krishna because you're performing that thing that he wants to do, which is to serve and please his own pure devotee. Just like in the 1920s, I think, or early 30s, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said to Srila Prabhupada, who was asking him, you know, I'm just grihastha, you know, I'm not in your mata, I'm not in your temple, I'm not like a renounced person. I have family, wife and children, but I want to serve you. How can I serve you? And his guru told him, well, your English is excellent, you're very intelligent. One thing you should do, you should translate these books. You should translate these books, translate Srimad Bhagavatam that we're reading right now, translate it and distribute it to the English-speaking world. And in his words, he said, it'll be good for you and it'll be good for those who help you. We see that. Good for you, good for those who help you. Prabhupada relayed that information to his devotees who, in his manifest presence, were distributing his books and distributing it to themselves, reading his books. And we see that those who assist Srila Prabhupada in his mission of distributing books and also in his mission of helping people to imbibe the contents of Srimad Bhagavatam, they become closer to Krishna because they're serving the interests of a pure devotee of Krishna. So this culture is very, very relevant for us. It's not simply an arcane ritual that Vidura is remembering devotees. And it's not mere sentiment. These are not material emotions. These are spiritual emotions of separation, deep, deep spiritual emotions of appreciation. For the devotees, he feels a great debt to them. He remembers them very fondly because of that relationship of service. And for us, this relationship of service is absolutely manifest. When we associate with devotees, we're associating primarily through their instructions, their words, what they want. And we're trying to, even if we're not in their physical association. And when we're doing that, we're actually metaphysically, we're advancing spiritually. We're remembering them, which means we're remembering Krishna. We see this in one conversation between Srila Prabhupada and one of his disciples. I believe it was Urmila Devi Dasi, who brought her father, not practicing devotional service, her father, to meet Srila Prabhupada. And I believe afterwards, Srila Prabhupada and Mother Urmila were discussing, and Srila Prabhupada was saying, so, you're my disciple, you love me, you're surrendered to me, and your father, he loves you. So therefore, he is connected to me also. Like that A equals B, B equals C, so A equals C. It's like your transitive property in mathematics. This is how it works spiritually, that she was very satisfied to hear that her father was making spiritual advancement because he was supporting her devotional practice, and she was sold out to Srila Prabhupada, who of course is sold out to Krishna. So this is our lifeline. We also heard, I heard this recently from Mother Nidra giving, here in Denver, giving a reflection in a Bhagavatam class, that Srila Prabhupada was discussing with Shankar Prabhu. Shankar Prabhu, I believe, I may be wrong, I believe he just passed away recently. He was a cook in the Alachua community, very sweet devotee. In the early days of the movement, he was engaged in tending flowers and plants, right? Gardening. And the Juhu project, which is in Mumbai. And so, Shankar Prabhu was getting the association of Srila Prabhupada a great deal at that time, and Srila Prabhupada noticed his service. He noticed what he was doing, and he encouraged them by saying, these plants, you're drawing a flower from these plants. The plants that give a flower that goes to Krishna's service, they get benefited. Srila Prabhupada said. Shankar remembered this very clearly and talked about it later. Whether you're a gardener or you're a cook, you can meditate on this. This is a kind of Sankirtan. This is a kind of Sankirtan when you're taking care of other living entities. If you're in a devotional mood, they get uplifted, by virtue of the devotional service that you're practicing, which has come to you by virtue of other devotees more advanced than you. Then others who are less advanced than you also become drawn magnetically toward Krishna. So this is very, very powerful. And in one purport, I couldn't find this purport. I read it a couple of times. It's in the 3rd or 4th canto. Srila Prabhupada says, and if anybody can find this purport, long life to you. It's one of my favorites. He says that even those who just appreciate, if they could just appreciate the activities of this Krishna consciousness movement, those who appreciate it get the same benefit, he says. Literally, he says, the same benefit as those who are propagating Krishna consciousness, which is, if you think about it, remarkably liberal. It's an incredibly liberal thing for Srila Prabhupada to be offering. Even you're not practicing devotional service at all. You're situated completely in mature consciousness. If you can satisfy the devotee by appreciating what they're doing, that's very good for you. And in the 11th canto also, there's another verse that one who can appreciate the activities of devotional service performed by others becomes purified, even if they're so degraded that they hate the demigods and they hate every living being. There's a verse that says that in canto 11. By appreciation, one becomes purified to that level. So this capacity to become purified by association is so subtle that simply by appreciating a devotee and what they're doing, and if you can't do it yet, this helps you to advance. So just to summarize, we're hearing the deep emotional connection that Vidura has with devotees. That connection is through the medium of service to the devotees, which means service to Krishna ultimately. We heard about how important devotional association is. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it's the root cause of development of bhakti. Ultimately, that's where it comes from. Ultimately, our root cause for our bhakti is, in this life or another, we receive the mercy of the devotee. And we heard about how Krishna feels about his devotees, and how if we're serving them, then we become very endeared to Krishna himself. How deity worship and prasadam distribution, deity worship is not complete until prasadam is distributed to his devotees. And how Vidura was described and Vasudeva were described as munificent, gift-giving in relationship to other devotees. They're well-wishing, like Srila Prabhupada, ever well-wishing. And how when one becomes connected to a devotee, one becomes connected to Krishna. Even if you're a plant, you just give a flower. Plants, we have no idea what kind of level of consciousness a plant has. Very, very low. How aware are they that we're taking a flower and then we're offering it, or like a ripe apple, practically it just falls off the tree. You just offer it to Krishna, and they're getting advancement. This is service. The plant has just offered service to Krishna because some devotee has engaged them. Very, very deep principles. So at this point, I would like to hear any comments or questions, and especially any reflections that you have from your own life. Anything that particularly I would love to hear, any experience you have with devotees, how it's changed you, or how you've seen others come along in Krishna consciousness through your association, how this principle is acting, and the deep spiritual emotion that's there when we recall the activities of devotees in our lives, as Vidura is recalling. It may not be, a Mahajan like Vidura, may not be a great, great devotee, but all of us I know here have some experience of being uplifted by association. And if you'll share that, then I'll be uplifted by your association. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Damayanti.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much
Hare Krishna.
for the class. I feel very encouraged. Sometimes I worry about my family and where are they going? But they're very supportive of me practicing Krishna consciousness. My parents and sisters, so they're interested. My father read the Bhagavad Gita. Even he's not taking up Bhakti Yoga, but just very open-minded. So that was encouraging for me. It's like, oh, I don't have to worry. Anyway, the other thing is that last night my husband and I were chanting, finishing up chanting on our beads, and we were listening to Prabhupada as well. And our son, who's 11, came out to the living room, like bored, like not ready to like go to sleep yet, and just sat there. And I was like, he obviously could tell we were engaged, so it wasn't like talking. I was like, do you want to go get your beads and chant with us? Because every once in a while he does, like I'll suggest it, I don't push it, but he just looked at me, and I was like, well, you could just listen. Like that's devotional service, just listening. It's called Shravanam, and you're doing Bhakti Yoga right now. And he didn't really say anything, but I did like kind of a silly, like a performance when I said it's called Shravanam, and I kind of danced, and he mocked that. And but he seemed, my children are never anti Bhakti Yoga, and then every once in a while they engage, and there's certain parts that's easy for them to engage in. But anyway, I just feel hopeful about my loved ones based on your class.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I've heard from devotees with children many times, many different devotees, that what really worked for them was not instructing or forcing children to practice devotional service, but exemplifying it, and that culture of just being a devotee. You can imagine like growing up with a devotee, what it's like to see somebody like practice devotion their whole life, and you see it from as a child, you see it from such a young age, even potentially birth. It's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, just the other night, I told my kids that I was like, you guys I think you might have been practicing Bhakti Yoga in a previous life, because why are you born in this family? Or, why are you here? Like, what, why are you placed here? And it's like, they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, Mother Molly told me that once, that I would probably practice Bhakti Yoga in a past life. Well, otherwise, why would I end up attracted to chanting Hare Krishna or something? They're like, oh, okay. And then I said, you guys started from age 2 and 4 to be in association with devotees. Now, I started at age 35, or 34, and I was like, you're really lucky. that was their thought going to sleep. So
Yeah.
Jai, thank you.
I'm appreciating very, very much the conversation. Yes, there's letters from Prabhupada. That Prabhupada heard that in some of the schools that they were like trying to force the children to chant, and Prabhupada, he didn't like that. He said Krishna consciousness. First of all, he said children should play. It's kind of unfortunate he needed to say that, but he said he wrote the children should play in the Krishna consciousness. It's naturally joyful. It's naturally joyful, and they naturally get a taste. I'm reminded in this discussion, and from what you presented, Samyaprasa Prabhu, yeah, there's descriptions like with in the early days of Prabhupada's movement in the West, with the Sharf brothers. That was Bruce and Greg Sharf, who became Brahmananda and Gargamuni. And so they brought their mother, they brought Mrs. Sharp. I actually met Mrs. Sharf in Gargamuni when I was serving as temple president in Tel Aviv, Israel. They were coming for Gargamuni's nephew's bar mitzvah to Israel. And they visited the temple. It was a lot of fun. Anyhow, so she's some Jewish lady from New York. She wasn't practicing bhakti yoga, but when she would visit, she visited Prabhupada. He practically insisted that her sons offer her obeisances. It was a little uncomfortable for them. They weren't used to offering obeisances to their mom, but they offered obeisances. And that verse you referred to, I appreciate referencing it. I believe it's purports to 4th canto, maybe 6th canto. But someone who's not opposed but supportive, even energetically supportive. Yeah, Prabhupada writes that they make as much progress, as much advancement as someone who's practicing. So that could be like discouraging for someone like, well, I get up every morning, chant 16 rounds, and so all someone needs to do to make as much advancement is go, hey, you guys are pretty cool, and they make as much advancement. So I guess the way I'm understanding that is, it's true that just for someone, hey, you guys are pretty cool, it's all right, yeah. Then they make just as much advancement as someone who's at the same time. To continue to progress, we'll need to go beyond, you guys are pretty cool. Like to continue to progress, then it's just like, okay, then we open up and we get grace to convert. Then it means, okay, yeah, now let me give some commitment to serve the mission. Let me give some commitment to serve the movement, to serve the pure devotee Srila Prabhupada. Let me give some commitment to practice. So as you said, I like the words you used. It's so liberal and accommodating, this process. And all right, speak a bit about my own history back there in, this was late 70s, early 80s. And, okay. Yeah, just for 3 years, the only service I did was to consume prasadam, but I did it well. And I did it in abundance for 3 years. With gusto, yeah, full heart, 100%. I gave 100%. Yes, and it took me 3 years of consuming prasad before I chanted 1 round of japa. And in that time, I was serving as chairperson of an organization called the Free University at Penn State University. It was an organization that offered we'd offer courses like on the campus, but they weren't 4-credit courses. It was called the Free University. Maybe there's an open university like that. And I was like the chairperson for a few years there. And the devotees, headed by Stambadas Prabhu, he's my Vartma Pradarshak guru. Stambadas Prabhu, he's one who served me so much prasad over the years. They were running into some, because they also ran a cooking class on Tuesday evenings on the campus on university grounds, like that, a university kitchen. And I would sometimes come to the cooking class on Tuesday nights too. Somehow I always timed it, and I never could quite show up for learning the cooking, but I always showed up for the part where they were serving the prasad after the cooking. And I said, oh, I missed the cooking lesson. Oh, but you're serving samosas. And so it just somehow for 3 years, it always turned out that way. I entered just my watch or something. So anyhow, the university was giving them some trouble. And I wasn't, other than taking prasad, I wasn't practicing, but I wasn't following principles. I was beginning to read Prabhupada's books. And there was maybe like 150 courses offered through the Free University. There was maybe 150 courses offered. And I would have helped any of the course teachers. but I actually did some advocacy. With the university administrators, and I said, well, you're actually being biased, and I did some advocacy on behalf of the devotees, and then they got to keep their kitchen facilities for their Tuesday evening program. I was motivated. You're saying you're saying I was motivated. There might be truth to that. So in a sense, I would have done it for him, but I think because I was being fed and nourished by the devotees, maybe I had some extra inspiration. So somehow, like I got roped into doing some service, and then through that prasad and some service, my heart got like maybe a little purified to be able to understand something in Prabhupada's books, to begin to chant. So I appreciate this theme. It's Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for reflecting. Yes, I'm imagining for myself what it'll be like for me to remember my own Darshika gurus after another 20 or 30 years of practice, how much affection there would be, how much gratitude. This is very much our culture. Yeah, if somebody does something to help us advance in devotional service, even one thing, and then maybe they themselves fall away, just that appreciation of, well, they did something for me that can't be taken away. That's very powerful.
I feel forever indebted to Stamba. Yes. I see that Bhakti and Laura's hand is up.
Hare Krishna, good morning. Thank you for your class. I'll share my current experience with that since you asked about that. So I'm living here in Asheville, and although it doesn't always make sense to me, when I arrived, I was like, oh yeah, I wanna do like a bhakti program. I'm like, what? Why do I want to do that? What does that mean? And so it's been on my mind and heart and questioning that. And then like I went to a group a few months ago, like a singing group. I'll try to tell the short version. I went to a singing group, and then I actually brought prasadam, because I was like, I'm gonna offer my food and bring it to this group. And then the host of the group was actually had like a picture of Prabhupada. It was just a devotional singing group, nothing with Krishna consciousness, but still like devotional. And that was really sweet to see Prabhupada there. And then I connected with the guy that was hosting. And then me and him met another time, and we spoke about bhakti at the end of that. And then we met and talked about bhakti and chanted once together. And then I brought him to one of online morning program classes. And then after that, I was like really inspired. I was like, oh my God, what about hosting some kind of program here? And he actually had like a huge desire to do that in his heart. He was like, I was like surprised. I was like kind of nervous even to say that to him, because I wasn't like totally convinced myself. Still am not. And he was like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about that. I want to do that. And he's been like he hasn't talked to anyone else. He doesn't have much like any association. I don't think he's like shared about his own bhakti to anyone. Like he reads the Bhagavatam and the Gita for like the last year, but he's like hasn't had any association. So, and he shared that with me. And then so there was some time between that, and he'd been to some temples, and he actually went down to Alachua because I shared about it with him. He went down there. And so all that happened. And then just a few days ago, we did host our first program, and we didn't like, I have a really hard time planning things. I don't like planning. I don't know. I don't really want to. I don't like putting effort in. So that's something that's a challenge for me. And I guess I get to grow there, but I also like just want to do things in the moment. But it all came together and there was like 3 devotees actually in Nishigats that came, like 2 of them from Prabhupada, and one of them else has like another spiritual master. It's under Prabhupada. I can't remember his name. And so it was really beautiful. And there was only like 3 other people besides them, but it was like three of the devotees, 3 other people, then me and him. And it was, yeah, it was really cool to come together. And like, I brought my harmonium and mridanga. And then of course, like someone knew how to play the mridanga. Like I didn't know. And so like, I got to play my harmonium. Someone was playing mridanga. And then one of them even offered a song. And then like we did a verse, and then I offered for the devotee, I was like, why don't you lead a verse, you know? And then I was like, why don't we say the Sanskrit all together? And so it kind of came together like unknowingly. And so that's my experience. As you asked about, yeah, like serving devotees, I feel like, yeah, I served this friend, or we served each other, and then kind of this was created. And then these devotees came, like one even drove up from Greenville, South Carolina. I don't know if he came just for our program, but like he came to visit his devotees friends, and they all came here. And then one of the devotees who lives here, he's like, yeah, I want to do this. Like he wants to come every week if we host it. So it is for now. So that's my little auspiciousness, and I don't know, I guess unfolding, even though I'm kind of bewildered by it and not quite convinced myself, but something's there. And it was like so satisfying. I was like, I don't get it was really satisfying, like doing that. And yeah, that's all I have to share. So Hare Krishna, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's good for you, and it's good for those who help you. I also heard in your reflection. The principle of if you build it, they will come. You know, we never know how many people are out there waiting for somebody to give association because they want it. You may think like, I'm pretty insignificant. What can I do? But I heard from you, just trying to plug in and make a difference. People drove up, people you weren't expecting, and you know, they showed up, and there was a program, and everybody benefited from that. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations, Bhakti and Laura.
Yes,
Inspired by that.
wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Hayal and then Nico.
Krishna, thank you for your class. I was really appreciating, because sometimes with Bhakti Yoga, I think like I think about like, oh, I'm not reading, or I'm not, doing enough. But I was really appreciating like, okay, well, if I can show up and be around other devotees, I can do my best to do that, then making some progress. And also I'm reflecting and laughing because my brother's not here, but I don't know how many years ago, again, I guess we're all reflecting a little bit about our own path, but many years ago when I first moved to Alachua, my brother would go to the Krishna temple, and he would go by himself, he'd be chanting, and he met some friends, and then he brought me to a program. And I got to the program and I was like, this is weird. I thought everyone was hypnotized. I didn't hear a word that the presenter, the devotee shared. I didn't hear a word. My consciousness was not ready for it in any way, shape, or form. I left and I told my brother, I was like, no, Krishna consciousness is not for me. And it's quite serendipitous, or I guess I wasn't ready. My soul wasn't ready then, but my brother got credit, and he shares with one of his friends that is a devotee as well, and he's like, no, my sister chants, and she goes to programs, and so it's funny. And I was also appreciating how you shared about how our family members get what was the word, credit as well, and just feeling grateful to have my mom here and have my brother when he was here as well, and my dear friend Francesca.
Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. Thanks for participating in our program.
She's it's very sweet to see her come to the temple and just very open. She's from Brazil, and just to see her as a devotee of the Lord, and it's been such a sweet experience. And again, going back to your class of surrounding ourselves with devotees, and, again, reflecting on my own spiritual progress, like when the spark was, it was like, oh, I want that. Like, oh, I want devotional service. And I still remember it was when Marie shared those words with me, like that is her intention, is to be in devotional service. And finally, my soul decided. Before that, not so much, but I'm very grateful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Yeah. Sometimes we're giving association, sometimes we're receiving association.
Nico, Bhakti Nico.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for today's class. I'm really appreciating technology for one, because like I'm at my grandparents' house in Philadelphia, and I'm with my friend Alex, who I met in India 2 years ago, and he happened to live like just down the street from my grandparents. And anyways, yeah, a few things I'm really reflecting on. One is this idea that any place like Bhagavatam is spoken is a sacred pilgrimage site. So I'm like grateful to make my grandparents' house a sacred pilgrimage site. And then yeah, this idea of association, and like I'm so grateful to be able to share like this with my grandparents and with my mom, who's here as well. And like I told my parents, like, yeah, like I moved into this guy David's house, and like we wake up at 5 a.m. and we do these things, and they're like, what? And it's like, it was so nice. Like my mom, like she lost her phone, like whatever last night, so she happened to come down early this morning, and it was right before 7:30. And they've always been really supportive as well. So it's so nice to hear that like they're getting benefit from my practice, from my engagement in Bhakti Yoga, just their support and their appreciation for me and for devotees that they have met. And anyway, so she comes down this morning, and like I read her a little bit from like Chant and Be Happy with George Harrison, and we chanted the Maha Mantra a few times. And then she sat in, and the first kirtan, like this morning, she was in there, and I was like, yeah, like that's David, and that's Marie, and that's Rachel, and that's Damayanti, and those are my friends, and that's my house. And it was just like it was just so beautiful, like knowing, like hearing, like, and then having this lecture right after, and just hearing how much benefit that like they're receiving from being engaged in the process. And then yeah, I'm really resonating with the process of prasadam, and like how it's not complete until you serve someone, and whoever accepts it is considered a devotee in that moment. So that's so beautiful. Like I had some fear about setting up an altar and like doing the process of offering, but I like did it anyways, because I'm endeavoring to be committed to it. And then yeah, serving whoever would eat it. Like my mom, my grandfather ate a salad last night that I offered. So it's yeah, it's so beautiful, and I'm so grateful to be in this space. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. I'm hearing a lot of enthusiasm for the principles of bhakti. Yeah, it's nice to hear that that you're feeling inspired to expand your practice wherever you are geographically, and it's working. You're getting the experience, and others are getting the experience too.
Hare Krishna, I see Gajendra Prabhu has your hand up.
Hare Krishna. I guess it popped into my mind when Payal was speaking. It's just, I guess I just don't, about maybe not sometimes knowing when even a short association with a devotee can be profoundly effective, or just even ourselves, if we're in Krishna consciousness, if we're just in the park chanting, if we're just in our service to Sri Guru and Gauranga, we may not always understand the profound effect that can come from that. I'd like to just quickly relate my own story, because I think that's partly what we're doing. When I was 12 years old in 1972, I lived in Miami. And I heard my parents talking about these sort of people going around to the house. I don't remember what their exact language is, but I understood it was some religious person. And I got the impression I wasn't supposed to deal with such a person. So I was home alone, and all of a sudden there's a knock on the door, and I open the door, and there's this guy with a shaved head wearing robes. And I'm 12 years old, and he wants to, talk to me about Krishna consciousness, but he also wanted to engage me in service. And after we talked for a minute or two, and I'm feeling really nervous because my parents' words are sort of bouncing around in my mind. And so he asked for a donation, and I just was in conflict because, well, what my parents had said, but here's this guy, and I'm really feeling something. And so it was a real conflict. And I remember at one point he was just looking at me and he goes, just a penny, because he had this really deep conviction to engage me in service. And I didn't give him the penny. And it was almost like tearing me up. After he left, I remember I went to the window of the house and watched him for about an hour as he went door to door. But it still left me with something, the sincerity of his service, just that couple minutes. So even to this day, I just feel like, you let him go and you didn't even give him a penny. But, it's like, so, who's to say, when we're walking down the street or chanting japa or, just heading to the springs and just say Hare Krishna to someone on the path, it's like, who's to say what the result is of being Krishna consciousness and being willing to, just being Krishna conscious and being willing to share it with other people, even if they're not so receptive at that moment. Who's to say?
Thank you. And the proof is that half a century later, you remember that with such clarity.
Yeah. Oh
I'm reminded of a chapter from my Guru Maharaj's book, Our Family Business, about how book distribution is something Srila Prabhupada has empowered everybody to perform to any degree. And in the chapter called The Penny Principle, there's a story related about a follower of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta who was distributing, collecting donations in India, and he knocked on a door, and there was a husband and wife having a quarrel, and they were not at all interested in hearing about Krishna, about the new, devotional temple, this and that. So this devotee knocked on the door, one of them answered, the other one said, what's going on out there? And he said, oh, they want some donation or whatever. And so they very sarcastically gave some ashes. He said, oh, you want a donation? Here's some ashes. Take some ash. Like, get out of here, And the devotee took the ashes back to the pujaris in the temple, and they used it because ashes you can actually use to polish, as a kind of like way of polishing, used to polish the silver for Krishna's paraphernalia. And eventually they went back to this door and they knocked on it. And it was a different day, it was a different situation. The couple were completely transformed, and they felt terrible for what they'd done. They felt like, why did I do that? They gave, and they started to become turned. And this happens again and again. We see there's just countless examples of people who give even unknowingly. There was one example. There was a very sarcastic and rude security guard in the airport. I forget if it was Chicago's O'Hare Airport. It might have been. In the days when the devotees were distributing very widely in the airports in the 70s. And he used to pick up pennies from the ground, this security guard, and fling them at the devotees, just like sarcastically, here, just throw it at them, which can hurt. And the devotees would humbly pick it up and put it in their donation jar and, take it back to the temple and give it to spread Krishna consciousness. And one day this security guard was famous for being inimical. One day they saw him come to the Sunday feast, So just by being in touch with it, we have no idea. We have no idea what kind of effect is going on. Krishna is acting without our awareness. It's very, very powerful.
Devotees are alchemical beings for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ladini.
Hare Krishna. I want to appreciate the class. When we meditated lesson report, I thought there is nothing I could say about this. So I really appreciated that you took it. Super inspiring to hear all these stories. I want to add mine too because I have anniversary today. So today is anniversary. I am still in my anniversary consciousness. So 7 years ago, it was a spiritual root program here at the Raghavinda Prabhu's home. That was my first Bhakti Yoga program.
I'll just give context. The day after the advanced seminar of Safato, we have we call it a Safato Philosophical Spiritual Roots Program. Yes.
So I came to that. I was very committed that I'm not going to chant Hare Krishna after that program. And yeah, that's why I came with my friend who is like really inimical towards Krishna consciousness. She was my guard.
Yeah.
And then we have prasharam breakfast that was personally prepared by you, and I am very picky about food. And I could tell you didn't ever go to Stamba Prabhu part where he actually thought.
You could tell that. It showed.
It showed.
Okay.
But I did the austerity and ate it anyway. Anyway, so I think that was my service, and then I started. That was my service to do the austerity.
It was your austerity.
And then I started to come to the programs, and like in Czech, it's really impolite to come to visit without giving anything. So anytime I would come, I would bring something. So that was my little service. So anyway, I'm forever grateful to you. And yeah, it's a powerful thing to associate with devotees.
Thank you. Wonderful. Happy anniversary.
By the time you went back to Czech 2 weeks later, you were somehow or other committed to chant at least 16 rounds of japa per day. Just thought to fill in that factoid.
Amazing. Yeah.
You said it's evidence-based. You said it's evidence-based. So that's all I needed to hear.
Yeah, you ran the experiment on your life. So yeah, and whenever you see your service, you can remember these devotees, and whenever you see the devotees, remember the devotees, you'll be connected to your service. They're inextricably connected, the service and the devotees. And then together they take us to Krishna. Wonderful. Hare Krishna. Anyone else? I don't know how long we're going to go for. I'm on your time. I'm at your disposal.
Well, we can be complete. If there's if we want, we can go another 5 minutes. If there's any other comments or sharing, or we can.
I'll share.
Parampara.
Thank you, Samyaprasa Prabhu. And it's timely for me. It's about the parents, the favorable appreciation, piece, because my parents are coming this morning to see first of all, see our new house since we moved in. And I was kind of thinking, but my wife Rohini was like, well, what about the deities? What should we do something like Prabhupada's Murti and like deity? And I was kind of just like, no, whatever, I wasn't thinking anything above it really. But in actuality, my parents are favorable in a sense of like, they see how I transform my life. They're glad for that. So they're very appreciative in that way. And they're appreciative of how we live our life in a lot of ways. But then my mom specifically is very, strict Christian in a sense, some way. So the deity thing is like kind of, that's an issue, for her. So, so what I'm thinking is like, okay, if people who are appreciating the devotees get as much benefit as the devotees, then I need to take responsibility. We need to take responsibility to be making a favorable impression, so that they do appreciate. Yeah. So yeah, kind of, because I was kind of, even still, I was kind of just like, I don't really know, deities there, whatever. So now I'm thinking, okay, so maybe we do have, have a curtain or have them go to sleep or something. I'm thinking more seriously, like, okay, how to create a favorable impression. from my parents that I do appreciate. I appreciate that. And then I'll just mention a couple things about the devotees and just telling stories and things like that. I just told a story today. I tell a story all the time. I won't tell the whole story, but just the Adikarta Prabhu distributed me my first book on the campus at UF. And at the time, I didn't even understand the words that he said to me. And at the time, it's just, but I got the book and I was like happy about the book. And I was like showing off the book, and I like had an Indian girlfriend, an Indian, her sister. And I was like, look at this book I got. I'm cool. I'm in India. Look, what do these words say? How do you say this? Prabhupada, like, how do you say this? And so it seems like a very small thing. It's not like from that I became a devotee, but looking back, just like how that was a huge thing for my life. I tell a story. I love to tell a story. And just and then whenever Adikarta said what he said, whenever he's doing the book distribution, he said, "You're a spirit soul trapped in the material world." I like had this cosmic vision and like went straight to my heart, and I didn't even understand it at the time. But looking back, I was like, "Wow, that was really a huge impact for me." And then later, I got to tell him, I saw him at the temple and stuff, and I got to tell him like, look, I'm here, but I'm practicing devotee, And he's like, wow, and he was so like uplifted because he's like, yeah, sometimes I give a book, and I don't know what happens, So it felt really good to give that feedback to him, like that was really important, like that made a big impact. Of course, he has so many people that he makes a big impact with, but it was really special to share that. And then I'll just share that I'm just realizing, wow, Sattvatov. Really, I really got kind of tricked into just coming. I thought I was coming to staff a seminar just to support some personal growth seminar, but actually I was doing service to devotees and doing devotional service. So, that's convenient. How that worked out after I took the courses. And
you ended up playing Balaram in the devotee
I was going to
play.
say that another part too, like the devotees. Yeah, so I was going to the temple, and I was just going there for the fun and the kirtan and the prasadam, and then there was devotees that were my same age, similar age, and I happened to. Whenever I was a kid, I'd like to do plays, so I like to be on stage. I like to do plays, and so they were doing a play, and I was just like, yeah, I'll do a play. That sounds fun, and that devotee is not the devotee that kind of engaged me in the service. I think you mentioned this too, like it doesn't really matter if the devotee is what status the devotee is or how much practice, how staunch of a devotee or rigorous a devotee. Because that devotee, like, he basically told me, like, I don't believe any of this stuff. Like, he grew up with it. He's like, I don't believe any of this stuff. But he was doing a play, and he engaged me in the play, and it was perfect for me at the time. It's like, oh, you don't believe it? I don't believe either. Cool. We're both on the same page. We're just here for the fun, And so it's like perfect for me, and he totally engaged me and like left a big impression and association with the devotees. And so it doesn't even the service is absolute. That's what I'm getting. The service is absolute, whether or not the person, the devotee, the quality of the person, the service is always. Absolutely, that's fun.
Amazing.
Reflecting.
Thank you so much, Jai. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you, Samyaprasa Prabhu. Thanks for leading class and discussion and enlivening us.
Thank you for inviting me. I feel enlivened and grateful that I was able to be with all of you this morning. Really great way to start my day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hi.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hi.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.